Good morning and welcome to another edition of Roadhouse Live. We are live today. It's October 20th, 2023. Bender, it's Friday.
Good
It's
morning.
Friday.
It is Friday.
I hear myself. I hear myself.
Damn it. All right. Sorry, Discord people. Still not going to work. Keep going. Still
So,
on YouTube.
it's like I did some pondering last night, Bender. I
What'd you
did some.
come up with?
So this is what I came up with last night. Um, I was looking at the dollar. I was looking at some of the other things, and then I was like, you know what? Let me look at crypto real quick. And I was like, what the hell is going on over there? And then this morning, I wake up and at one point today, it was over 30,000.
Yep.
So then I started thinking to myself, if I'm looking at everything and I'm listening to what Pal said, right? Yesterday, which Pal did not say anything that should have caused a red candle. I'm very firm on that. That's about as close to a victory lap that you're going to get from these people. And then I sit there and I read Bostic's comments from this morning. He, in a lot of ways, is again taking, and thank you, Total, for putting that out there, taking, a certain victory lap. So then I go back and again I think to myself, okay, so let's go back and look at the dollar with what it's doing. If you look at it on the daily, this thing, it has tried multiple times to pop, this previous high and failed. And it looks as if you pare it down to a 1 hour, that looks like it could be a head and shoulders. Much like yesterday on the show, I said, hey, that looks like a bull flag on the dollar. Dollar came up, tested the top of that flag, attempted to break out and failed. So then I'm like, okay, so what about the VIX? VIX has been a different story lately, right? It's actually been a player in the game. You can actually chart it, you can actually look at it and see it and what's going on with it. And I was like, okay, so what are you doing, VIX? What's your story? VIX is more in one of those positions to where it potentially is right on the verge of a very strong breakout to the upside. So the dollar is kind of looks as if it can wane and not be a problem, but the VIX is highly elevated, waiting to break out to the upside. So then what does the VIX need in order to break out? It needs some type of a catalyst because it is extremely elevated for the market conditions, unless you want it to take into effect um, geopolitical elements, right?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So a lot of what is there now is basically pricing some shenanigans in and then some is why it's sitting where it's sitting. No headline, VIX usually fades off of the highs in a way. So when I'm looking at everything, we're completely oversold. We're completely beating it to the ground. The sentiment is about as nasty as it can get after some of these moves in the volatility. But the messaging is actually better now, other than geopolitically, than it probably ever has been when it comes to the Fed, when it comes to its role with the economy. And even with some of these corporate earnings, while they haven't been great, they haven't exactly been awful. And I think it was expected that this would be, kind of a quarter to where we could see some damage. And so far, it is not extremely damaging. TSM put up, numbers that are okay. That's a good ER, regardless of the environment. So I think in looking at all this, the geopolitical piece is going to become, if it hasn't already, the catalyst one way or the other as to whether or not we climb that wall of worry or we feel like we need to risk off even that much more based on what's going on over there. I think domestically we're accounted for because that in a lot of ways incorporates the dollar. Now this is just look, this is surmising, this is pontificating, this is a lot of different things. There's nothing The only facts in here are the levels that we are in the messaging that's being put out, right? Those are the facts. Now, what you do with the facts, how you analyze those, that's a little bit different. But environments like this have always felt to me as like this is where you need to look to be buying and not selling in areas like this, based on where we are with the dollar, based on where we are with the VIX. It's like this is that zone. Now, can we go lower? Absolutely, absolutely. But I think it's going to take a legitimate catalyst in order to push the VIX, because the dollar looks like it's ready to melt. It genuinely does. So that's what I got, Bender. And the other thing is Bitcoin being the wild card, right? Over there with it surging and making its move. You could look at that as being a hedge. It's either a hedge for the end of the world, or somebody decided to risk on pretty good last night and over the last few days, last few weeks. So I guess we'll see when we get there. That's what I got. That's my take. That's how I'm going to try to play the day unless it shows me something different. Why don't you walk us some charts over there?
All right. And I agree with you as far as, the one thing, the one, there's always variables, but the one variable that, we kind of talked about last week was, there were a few areas that I thought would hold. And, the one variable I threw out was like, well, unless, this situation that we have going on, with Israel, if they decide to risk off, if that has some impact in causing them to sell some things or just an excuse to sell, yeah, we can pull down a little bit further. We don't know when that stops, but I agree with you that just based on everything that you're looking at, everything that I'm looking at as far as the charts and seasonality, it's like, well, bad news creates buying opportunities sometimes. And then the question always remains is, sure, we're going to bounce from where, when, right? And that's always the challenge. But let me get this chart going here. All right, let's start with daily. And that doesn't tell us a whole lot other than, we're coming down into this area that kind of formed the bottom on this last bounce. And I think, as far as the daily goes, everybody knows that this area, this 44.30-ish right here, until we're back above that, then it starts to look like, okay, we can push up from here. Until that happens, we're inside. We may have 100 points in here, but we're inside of this range. 42.42. That comes in, where's this candle at? I'm right there. 42.35 half. This candle's low. That's about 50 down from here below there. And you can see some of these levels that I didn't think we'd attack, but certainly can. 42.0475 down to 41.50. That's just kind of bigger picture on the daily. Let's go to a 2 hour. Come in on that a little bit. Just a minute here. There we go. So this red shaded box right here being the bottom of that 60-minute fair value gap right there. If it falls below that, we'll zoom in. We'll look at the 15-minute, see what that looks like. But if it drops out of that, we'll say 42.75 or so, below that, Probably looking at this low down in here, 42.35.75. If it wants to drop below that 60-minute fair value gap, let's look at the 15. So it's the same on the 15-minute. Actually, in the 15-minute, you've got this candle right in here, 42.66. Right. So this area right in here, as far down as 42.66 because of that 15-minute, but this is where I would be looking. Give it a couple 15-minute candles, and see if we get that where it starts probing down in here and pushing back up. Right. Again, if we break below that and that becomes resistance, then we can start attacking some of these lows down in here. But if you get those wicks down into this and it pushes back up, that may be an indication that this was the objective. This is what it was after. On the flip side, going back to the 15-minute, we started here, 42, so 4,300, right? Obviously, big, hairy number. So on the flip side, I would say if it can get over 4,300, take out this candle's high, 43.0425, and this area in here can become support. And we can fill in some of this candle above. And if you are looking to get short, let's leave that the color it is for now. If you're looking to get short, I would be looking for a pop over this 43.0425 and see what it does. If you get that power candle through it, that could be indicative that it's going to move up from there. If it, power candle, pull back, fair value gap, and go.
And I think depending on how it gets there, if it throttles to get there and doesn't give this grouping of people who have been shorting literally all fucking night, and if you've been watching futures at all, it's like these guys are shorting with no fucking mercy. With no mercy. Like they just don't even have, there's no contrition, there's no planning, no objecting, just nothing. It's just like, oh, there's a green candle on the 15-second, let's try to short it. That's what a lot, if you trap those boys, that purple box up there becomes so possible, so incredibly possible just to follow. It's like, I'm glad you showed those. It's like those two boxes over there. Lot of pleasure in the paint. Never mind.
Yeah. And you're right. A big part of it is how does it get there? And once it does, again, does it get that power candle through there, or does it just kind of peek its head above and then pull back below and then back up into a fair value gap to ultimately go lower? So that, watching the reactions at those levels is just as important as knowing where those levels are, right? You can know where the levels are, but then once it gets there, it's like, okay, now what do you do with it? Well, for me, a big part of that is seeing how it behaves once it gets to those levels or takes them out or whatever. So, yeah, absolutely. Good point. In the near term, the open, let's watch this right in here. Right, same thing. You got 15-minute candles right here that are using this little fair value gap in here as resistance. So let's see what it does with that. If it continues to reject it, we might pull back down here. If it gets above it, we get 15-minute candles closing above it. then it'll likely go attack up and over 4,300. So that's about all I got. What's next, Mr. Stonkington?
I guess that's me. Let's
I
go.
guess that's you.
All right. So that means no Sonny. Let's go through his stuff, which looks relatively quiet on the news, except apparently everybody hates solar now. Sedge was down 20%, Flash's revenue outlook and guidance and basically everything. Sedge shit the bed.
Solar bad, sun bad.
Sorry, son. You're bad.
Good efficient power bad.
Bad. Bad. Weight loss companies are exploring weight loss shots for kids as young as 6. What? Like, I mean, I don't have kids, but like, if your kid needs a weight loss thing that's 6, like that seems there's another problem there. But whatever. I'm not a parent, so that's. General Motors is going to maybe reach a tentative deal. We saw some bulls. I saw bulls on Ford. Maybe worth checking if you like to trade GM. That's a slow mover. You got to buy time, but that could be something going on over there. And upgrade downgrades is pretty much just if you are solar, you suck. Somebody lowered a price target on Nvidia from 750 to 650, but it's like Nvidia's hundreds of dollars away from there. I think that's pretty much it. Basically, if you're solar, you're downgraded. If you're a large 6-year-old, you may have drugs on the way. So we've got the smash days on the books. Again, this is, doesn't mean buy, but it would be a potential long setup to the upside if we closed below the prior day's low. So we'd be thinking failed breakout, which would mean we'd be looking to buy above the prior day's high. We talked about the IWM. So Larry Williams would be sitting big fat green on a short here because he would have shorted at the break below the low of this candle. Again, failed breakout, close above the prior day's high, so he would have been shorting here, so he'd be nice and green by now. So this would still be a long setup over here. I guess I didn't adjust these. So that's kind of what it would look like for the IWM moving into today. If we let me get into some charts that are already all marked up over here. We did the ES. I was kind of just following along with Bender, marking mine up. And let's see. So similarly here on the NASDAQ, we're in this gap. So we filled this all in here. This was an hourly fair value gap. So that's filled in this green level below. I adjusted, let's see, busy chart. So this was going to be a bull order block. Originally was looking at this level here, but Mr. T would be more interested in the 50% retracement of this wick, which we're kind of hovering above. So we'll see if that offers some support from the downside. Above, we looked at this falling wedge that failed. Any pattern has only got really like a 50-50 shot. And then similarly, Bender was showing us on the 15-minute over there on the ES. We've also got this pleasure box above over there on the NASDAQ. So we'll see if we can pop up and through, and then see what we get up here at that 14,971 area. And then again, similarly, there'll be some stops sitting right above up here. So we'll see, same thing. Are we going to just stop out bears with break-even stops up there, or can we pop it and get some momentum to the upside? Kind of what are we looking for over here on the NASDAQ? If we jump over to the Russell, let's see. So start on the daily. So there, at least in terms of stops from the last year, any bull with a break-even stop is now stopped out. And this is the continuous contract to give us some more downside targets if needed, which then we're looking all the way back to, there was a weekly fair value gap right all the way back here. And then you can see these wicks on the daily doesn't really leave much else unbalanced into maybe this guy down here, that little gap between these lows and that high. But so yeah, we're running out of stops, at least for anyone in the past year below, until maybe if we had to go into this daily fair value gap. If we switch over to the 4-hour, we left the sell, we've left this gap. So that would give a potential target to the upside of this 1725. We've got the new week opening gap, and then we've got this pink volume imbalance. That's a volume imbalance on the weekly, and we can see these wicks. We're still not even gonna, lay a candle over that. So this is gonna be something that stays on my chart as we, unless somehow we, ran up into there today. But that's looking like it'll be on the chart for next week. Something to be aware of. Let's see. The other things we can keep an eye on today, the good old reliable Apple. Let's see. So we have below, I'm going to be watching this 174.10. We can see there's been a lot of reactions there. We've been looking at this rising megaphone setup for the past week or so, 2 weeks maybe even, and it is starting to play out. We'll see if it was just an overshoot of this lower trend line, or if we're going to continue, get some momentum. If we get back down through 174.10, I'll be watching this big dark pull down here, 172.65. To the upside, first thing I'll be looking for is for us to get back over 174.93. And then yesterday they were hitting Apple up there at that 175.77. So a lot of levels on the 4-hour, but once we start, scalping intraday, these will be important. Then the other one was going to be AMD. We've been looking at AMD all week and mentioned how, it was in this falling setup. We broke out of it, and then we're kind of retesting. And AMD kind of ended up still in my same triggers as the day before. So below, I'm going to be looking for this low to hold, 101.70. If we break that, we'll probably have some room down to maybe something like here, 100.3. Above, I'm going to be looking at 104.15 for AMD to the upside. That's all I got. I'll drop some of the charts in the room, but I think that's it for today.
Thank you, Stockton. That was great. Bender, thank you also. There we go. We got about 15 minutes until open. I think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, we're all of us walking into this day to an extent are kind of looking for a move higher within the markets, some type of a bounce into. Now, how we get there, completely different. But I think that am I wrong in saying that was the feel from the three of you? Or two of you?
Yeah.
And three of us? No.
Not wrong.
There are elements of that play in, right? So there are no absolutes in life. So I think it's important to point that out. I think two of the pieces, the trigger to this overall is going to be a VIX melt, which means no whammy headline. I think that's going to be a massive piece of this rally that we're going to get. We're going to see chips in the VIX. And we need the dollar, if nothing else, to just trade sideways. A VIX melt with a sideways dollar gives us the ability to catch a bid. We get both of them to melt down. And again, yesterday we had a bull flag on the dollar. Today we have a head and shoulders on the dollar on the 1 hour. It's like, this is kind of what it's looking like to me in a lot of ways. So that is what it's based on. Now, guys, you did a wonderful job walking us through. I don't have anything else. We do not have any real data throughout the day. Maybe there's a Fed speaker somewhere, hidden somewhere. But let's trade it clean. This market is giving a lot of opportunity. And as much as we may want it to go up or we may want it to go down, both flow and the charts are giving us some very, very great indications of what the move is going to be. The question is whether or not we're willing to listen, whether or not we're willing to be objective. So let's make today one of those days historically that we are extraordinarily proud of. That's what my focus is going to be for the day. That's all I got. You guys have anything else?
Nothing for me.
No,
All right.
I'm good.
We'll see
Let's
you
go.
soon.
All right.